Hi, Misha here, and I kind of had about 20 minutes in between other things while I wait on the computer to do computer things, so I thought, why not do another black box? And if we're going to do a black box, we need to go outside to the swing. So that's what we're doing right now. And it's raining again, and thundering a little bit. But it's not all that cool. It's warmer than it was last time I recorded a black box. And I'm recording this towards the end of my birthday, although it will not be published on my birthday, mostly because I just don't really want to put my exact birthday out there. I'm sure you can find it if you really care or try, but I don't know. The whole reason I don't have a Facebook and do a lot of that social media stuff is I kind of like to have a level of privacy. We all have our comfort zone, our line, and while I'm happy to talk with people and share certain aspects of my life when it comes to my personal private life, my family, that kind of thing, yeah, I'd rather kind of keep that on the DL. So anyway, it was my birthday, and it kind of started off as a pretty crummy day. But it got better. Yesterday, FedEx in our local area has been pretty iffy. For example, about a month ago, we usually get our groceries delivered, meals, whatnot, through FedEx, UPS, depending on whatever the service uses. And of course, when they deliver the meats and things, they use overnight. Well, for no good reason, we're talking in mid-October, so no weather reason, instead of delivering in a day or two, they took 6 days to deliver our groceries. My wife was none too pleased, so she rather let them have it with both barrels. And their excuse was basically, oh, we're short-handed. We don't have enough people. So that's why they let our groceries get spoiled just sitting in the warehouse. And I get that some stuff can sit, it's an annoyance, but other stuff like, food, medicine, pretty much anything sent overnight should probably be delivered within a day or two. And I have to wonder after that if we're not a bit on their shit list, because yesterday they claimed to deliver a package, and yeah, who knows if they knocked or not. It's funny when they say they tried to deliver, but they don't leave a stickum on the door. It's like, okay, if you were here, why is there no stickum? Anyway, today the tracking said, well, you can come pick it up. Great. Now the good news is where it was being held is very close to where I live, only not even a mile away. The bad news is I can't walk that. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Wednesdays, kind of difficult days. Thursdays and Fridays aren't always a lot better. Basically, I have help Mondays and Tuesdays. But anywho, going forward, I was talking with a friend who helps me out, and he just offered to take me down. So very quickly, I changed out of my home clothes, sweatpants and house shoes and that kind of thing, put on some clothes to run down there. But while I was doing that, all of my little brothers, my younger brothers, were calling me about my birthday, and I wanted to talk with them, but here I was trying to get dressed in a hurry to head out of the house when I wasn't expecting it and talk with them, so that was kind of amusing for all of us. So I did that, picked the package up, got that done, headed back home. And yeah, things got a little better. Met up with a couple of people I'd been playing phone tag with. Wasn't like it started off as a truly bad day. It just, you ever have those days when just nothing seems like it's hitting right? Like you miss all the wrong calls, and you just, I don't know. Just how it goes. But it ended up being okay. The wife is now working night shifts, so been here alone in the rain. and had a bite to eat, and about it. Here's a big thunder. Yep. Yeah, it's storming pretty good, kind of coming in. Anywho, so I had a bite, feel a little better. My regular energy drinks, so not really energy drinks, but I like the little Starbucks cappuccino and the can things. And apparently there's been a national shortage of those because Amazon's out of them, Sam's Club's out of them. But instead, my wife bought these things called Death Wish coffees. Yeah, there's a lot of caffeine in them. Unrelated, I drank one about 30 minutes ago and decided to do this video. Indeed. Lots of caffeine. Woohoo! I'm somewhat sensitive to caffeine because I don't drink sodas at all. And I don't drink a whole lot of coffee. Maybe 1 or 2 cups all day. So, yeah. But, doing that, went home, like I said, for Halloween. Planning to go back in a few weeks for Thanksgiving. Hopefully be able to see all the family. Now that everyone's scattering about, it gets harder and harder to do, but maybe life will let it go. There's been a few new guns, and they'll be over on the main Mishaco channel. On here, I got through the BT series of tanks, and we'll be posting a video soon on the T-34 tank, unless I've already done it by the time I put this video up. In that case, it's already up. So, got to the major T-34, one way or the other. And after that, we'll probably be covering some of the heavy tanks, like the KV-1 and the Stalin, the IS-2, and what have you. So that'll be fun. And that series, known as Fabri over in Russia, not the air freshener or the carpet freshener, but the Eagle Moss here. There's over 100 models, so we'll have plenty of Russian tanks to talk about for quite a while. And I have American tanks I will be getting to shortly as well. Not a whole lot else new. I have invited Jay to participate in a couple of upcoming video reviews that I thought would be relevant to him. I kind of got a maybe answer, so I don't know if that'll happen or not. And generally speaking, just trying to move forward with things. Trying to get some extra help. And might start putting in some part-time work at a couple of friends' companies. I don't know, I'm kind of, as I said last time, I just feel like this has run its course. Not that I'll quit being an FFL, but I just don't know if I can keep relying on it for a primary income source. I may have to start leaning more heavily on YouTube and doing 2 or 3 days of part-time work for some friends that run their own business. And part of that is I just want to get out more, socialize more in person. I have that desire. I don't like being isolated all that much, frankly. But we'll see. Kind of new plans. Of course, the Swiss guns, the SIGs, the 5.51s, the pistols, but with the 16-inch carbine length barrel, those are due in mid to late November, and last I talked to Dave, that's still the plan. So we should have some new Swiss goodness for the holidays. We'll see how that goes. I haven't really been keeping up with much of what's going on in the news. And there's real good reason for that, frankly. It's not news anymore. It's reality TV, or even daytime soap opera now. And I've said this in the past, but the news has ceased to be just that, news, and has become more of a solidification, a reinforcement of one's predetermined position on the left or on the right. You tune into this channel if you're this, you tune into that channel if you're that, and oftentimes the truth is in the middle. And the thing is, watching the news, engaging in it, it makes you feel like you're being better informed, but it's an illusion. It gives the illusion of control, and I get it, the way things are now. I think we all wish we had better control and more to say about what's going on, but the truth is we don't. And the truth is the news has ceased to be about being objective and trying to deliver accurate information. No, now it's more about clickbaity titles and get there fast, fast, fast. The first one to print the story, which means there's not time to verify and substantiate and back up source material. And again, the clickbaity ad system, sometimes you'll just see a title and people just assume that's it. Like, for example, even on the main Mishaco channel, and it wasn't really intentional, but I put out a recent video saying, was the SVT-40 Tokarev the best semi-automatic rifle its day and time? And it was more just and I ended with a question mark. And it was more just a, hey, look at this gun that some people don't always think about. Everyone thinks about the M1 Garand, the Gewehr 43. People don't always consider the SVT-40, and it was really just something to kind of, just make awareness. But based on the title, some of the commenters seemed to feel that I was saying that the SVT-40 was superior to the M1 Garand. And actually in the video, I blatantly say at the end, it wasn't. It was a legitimate question. But if you only go by the title, the headline of things, without digging into the meat, well, there it is. And of course nowadays news sources, and I use news in quotes, they get ad revenue just to get you to click on an article. And they're there with an agenda. And it's not a new concept. Newspapers were always kind of one way or another leaning. It's one reason the Associated Press came about, was to try to give a more even, objective, well-rounded point of view to certain articles, and of course to share articles and whatnot. But the point is, you can do that. You can spend 6-10 hours a day engaging in the news, be it on your TV, your tablet, wherever. And then when you get off, what has it gained you? Think about it. It won't change the political situation. And you kind of have to second guess if what you're being fed is the absolute truth. Even if it is, why does the other channel say the exact opposite? Why is your channel right and the other channel wrong? And I'm not saying your channel is wrong, but I mean, in my mind, that's how it works. Is what if two different places are saying two different things? How do you know this one's right, this one's wrong? Well, then you have to dig in. So on top of your news watching, there's extra hours to fact check, and you've wasted your day. And I do mean wasted, because even if you fact check and reinforce what you're being told, what has it gained you? You haven't spent time with your family. You haven't called up or gone over to hang out with your friends. You haven't really worked. You haven't done anything constructive like woodworking or whatever is your hobby. You haven't even really enriched yourself because that same time could have been spent reading a history book or whatever. It's almost empty calories. It's almost the McDonald's of the news world. What it does do, much like McDonald's, gives you lots of fat and salt and sugar. It does usually get your blood boiling. It does get your feels up, be it again liberal or conservative. It's designed to engage you more on an emotional level than it is an intellectual level. And yeah, you get worked up, but then what do you do with it? Argue with people on Facebook? Even if you're right, what good is it? Because everyone's so dead set in their opinions now, no one's going to listen. Either they're already agreeing with you, to which you're literally preaching to the choir, or they're dead set against you, to which they're not going to ever listen or change their viewpoint, and it's just going to result in name calling. And I think this is really endemic of Facebook, because if you look at the satisfaction, the happiness rating of Facebook, people on there, it seems like the more time people spend on there, the more worked up they are, and the more pissed off they are, and simply the less happy they seem to be. I don't know. You know, I recently did a Blackbox video where I talked about kind of the evolution of the internet. And you remember back in the 90s, if you were around the internet, people would warn you about giving your name, your phone number for sure, even your picture, because internet people were strangers. And that's what I liked about it back then. You could talk to people across the USA, heck, across the world. Now, though, for the past 10 or more years, people get on the internet, and if they discuss with people, it tends to be with people in their local community, clique, network, maybe across the nation, but either they're people they know in person, a friend, a family member, or it's a friend of a friend who they know in person. It's all kind of in that same group. And so it breeds that familiarity. So instead of being suspicious of what you read online, people today tend to just take it at face value, and without substantiating things. And this, you know, the gun world has fallen victim to this. Look at all the BS statistics and things purported about gun violence, and all the stuff about semi-auto, full semi-auto guns, all this stuff that gets circulated on Facebook about firearms. But of course, many other things are victim to this as well. I don't know. I was talking with one of my brothers, and he actually is a medical student, and he has thousands of hours of actual lab research time. And coming from my family, that probably tells you he's from a relatively conservative bent background. But people still argue with him over stuff that he's spent hours upon hours studying. And these people, as he put it, their research involves whatever they can do on their phone while taking a dump in the morning. The two are not quite equal. That said, hey, if you can work while taking a dump, good on you. Unless you're like a monkey in the zoo. That's, you know, they obviously take dumps while working and then throw the dumps at people. What was I saying again? Oh yeah, monkeys throwing poo. That's a great analogy for Facebook, frankly, because it is a bunch of monkeys throwing a bunch of poo. Most things you read on Facebook have just about as much value as that. Anything you read on there, any purported study, yeah, take it with a huge grain of salt. On both sides, not just the opposing side of your viewpoint, but your side too. If you're going to be skeptical about one, you need to be skeptical about both. That's not to say there isn't truth, but you just, you know, you need to exercise the same level of due diligence for both sides. And that's kind of where we're at today on the internet, and that's why I don't do a whole lot I mean, there's stuff going on in the news, and I'll poke my head in. I've been outraged over probably much of the same stuff you have, but at the same time, I only have so many hours in the day, and I'd rather spend them, hell, doing these videos here, doing research into my next tank or airplane video, you know, working with my next firearm, spending time with my friends and family. That's what's important to me, no more so than what this year has kind of taught me about what's really important and what's really valuable. And that's stuff where I can change and I can be effective. So that's what I choose to put my energy into. And I really do think that, so more than a Democrat-Republican thing, we have a ruling class thing, and they themselves have kind of adopted a divide and conquer attitude. Just as long as the dwindling middle class and the lower class are fighting amongst each other between either generational lines or racial lines or even sexual lines, that gives them a free hand. That's how you keep a democracy manipulated. When a population, when the average citizens are unified, at least into major blocks, then they can really vote, then they can really sway things, then they can make their opinion and desires heard. And that's terrifying to people that have been sitting in Congress for 20, 30, 40, even sometimes longer years. Because then they actually have to pay real attention. Because right now, they're not doing it. Right now, they talk a lot, but they do shit all, frankly. And yet again, I'll say we need to draw together. We need to do what's, you know, best for our group and realize who we're really, why we're in the situation we're in, because we're definitely in a situation. The U.S. has not had investment in its future in so very long. We haven't invested in ourselves, in our children, in our infrastructure, in our education. Even when we do invest in our defense, so much of it becomes pork barreling. So much is wasted versus just putting it towards better equipment for the average rank and file soldier, benefits for the veteran. I mean, imagine one thing that made this country really prosperous was the GI Bill following World War II. That really benefited returning veterans. First off, it showed them they were really appreciated. Second, it gave some an opportunity to go to college. Or if they didn't want to do that, it helped them start a small business. Or, at the very least, buy their first home. It gave them that foundation because of their sacrifice. We don't have that today, and that's a shame, because what that did, it really bolstered the middle class. It led to a time when you had a generation that could build up wealth, and it prospered the entire country, even the very wealthy, because companies were doing well. Now, I don't want to romanticize the 1950s. There were real and true issues back then. I'm just talking about how things like the GI Bill really did invest in our future. And we don't do that now. We haven't done that in a very long time. And if you think about it, that generation, they're the ones that built up the wealth for themselves. And then the subsequent generations have kind of been taking from that. And I don't mean that in a greedy way, but I mean parents are able to help their kids, and that trickles down. But eventually the money runs out, and not everyone was beneficial. We haven't had another generation that's peaked as much since that time. You look at the whole last gasp of, that. If you look at the baby boomers, they were the children of parents that could afford to support them and help them. They grew up in relatively stable homes for the most part. Of course, I'm highly generalizing, but if you look at what's come after the so-called millennial generation, now we're into the Generation Z, whatever they call that newer one, they don't have that foundation. If anything, they grow up, they go into debt to go to college, and they can't even turn to their parents because their parents are probably still paying off their college debt. So you have generation upon generation, and this has been the very gradual and consistent eroding of the middle class. And that's not just a problem for the middle class, that's what allowed everything to prosper. Someone from the lower class was never probably going to make it to the rich, the upper class, but they could aspire quite reasonably to get into the middle class. But now, what do you do? And a strong, motivated middle class is what allowed the wealthy to continue starting businesses, prospering, manufacturing, delivering services. Without that middle class to work, without that skilled professional class, what do you have? Eventually, it'll all come tumbling down because people have only worried in business lately about the next quarters, the numbers there, not about what business is going to look like in 5-10 years. And that's the problem. We really need to do something like the GI Bill. Of course, if you tried to pass it today, even though it was to benefit veterans that fought, bled, in some cases were maimed for this country, it would be pawned off as socialism, when really all it is that people in DC don't want to turn loose of taxpayer dollars to actually give back to taxpayers. Instead, the people in DC would rather keep the taxpayer dollars for themselves because, yeah, people in Congress, they have socialist medicine. They have free this and that. They're benefiting, yet when citizens are even talked about benefiting in anything like what they have, it gets shot down on both sides. Now, the Democrats will talk a big game about being in favor of promoting the lower classes and the middle class, but they do jack all. And then the Republicans, they talk about, oh, we don't want socialism, oh, that's communist, blah, 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 capitalism, bootstraps. Meanwhile, they're sure taking advantage of all these perks of their position. And they talk about hard work. Hell, most of them never really had a career outside of being a politician now. That's why I say we have a ruling class, because most of them go to college, and then they intern, and then they assist another politician, then they run for a junior office somewhere, then they work their way up from local to state to federal, and then that's where they reside for 40 years. So I really don't want a lecture from a goddamn hypocrite who is telling people to do something they never did. And I think that's another thing to point out is the group that's in charge now, they're totally out of touch. They don't understand what it's like for younger people to grow up in this era. And my generation's kind of right in the middle between the boomers and the millennials and now the Gen Zers. The Generation X crowd's just kind of right between them going, Basically, don't waste time watching soap opera news. And if you do, realize that you're kind of being fed a whole bunch of McDonald's level nonsense. And realize that the reason we're in the predicament we're in this country isn't always a liberal or conservative divide. It's the fact that no one on either side has been willing to sacrifice the present a little bit to hopefully have a better future. Everyone wants instant gratification. Everyone wants something, but they don't want to pay anything for it. And now we're seeing the dividends of that. A dwindling middle class, rising costs, people rather staying at home than going back to work, and just rampant distrust. And I can't say it's even wrong, because so many times now, instead of just giving us the straight dope, politicians and the news would rather sugarcoat it to the point of making it saccharine and kind of without value. Sometimes you need to treat your citizens like they're actual adults, even though, again, based on Facebook, Another big thunder. You have to kind of wonder if they are adults, but you still have to treat them like adults. I don't know. It's alright. It's just every generation, every time in history has had problems. I don't know that humanity's ever had a single point in history where things have just all been rosy and perfect. There's always something. Always something. So that's kind of how I spent my birthday, for what it's worth. Another year. It is starting to cool off out here now, I guess, as the storm rolls in. Temperature's dropping. Anyone want a cat? A mama cat showed up in our front yard a few weeks ago with 2 kittens. So if you need a cat, I think they're black or black and white. Let me know. Free cat. It's like free hat, but free cat. Or we could do like free cat with a hat, if that would make it happen. Alrighty, folks. I hope everyone's doing alright. By the time I publish this video, it'll probably be inching on towards Thanksgiving, so hopefully everyone has their plans. I'm sure there won't be any heated political discussion around the Thanksgiving table this year, right? What can you do? And I'll continue to do the armor videos, and if some new airplanes come in, I'll do those too, but they've been pretty quiet lately, so it is what it is. Well, appreciate you tuning in. As always, if you could, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time. Hi, Misha here, and figured it was time for another Blackbox, although this one might be a little shorter, just because I'm kind of doing it in between other... I'm going to start over.